Hello everyone! Anatoli Karpov won a lot of tournaments during his long chess career, but, well, this tournament he really destroyed the field. This is the 1994 Linares tournament, and it featured 14 players of extreme caliber. Players such as world champion Garry Kasparov, Vishwanathan Anand was there, Vladimir Kramnik, Vassily Ivanchuk, Veselin Topalov, Gata Kamsky, Beliavsky also played there. So definitely all of the strongest players in the world were playing this tournament. And Karpov won this tournament with 11 points out of 13 games. And that's 9 wins, 0 losses and 4 draws. He won it with 2.5 points ahead of world champion Garry Kasparov. So definitely crushing the field. And well, not only that, also in this tournament he created his Immortal game against Veselin Topalov. This was played in round 3. Karpov already won the first 2 games he played, and he has the white pieces against young Veselin Topalov. So Karpov goes d4, we have knight to f6, c4, c5, and knight to f3, avoiding d5 and the Benoni defense. C captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and e6. g3, knight to c6, bishop to g2, bishop to c5, and knight to b3, kicking that bishop away from c5. Now black has a couple of options here. He can go bishop b6, bishop b4 check, but Topalov goes for bishop to e7, probably the safest choice. Knight to c3, Topalov castles, Karpov castles, and d6, bishop to f4. And with this bishop to f4 move, well, Karpov is adding some nice pressure here on this d6 pawn. And you don't really want to play a move like e5. This does seem to be kicking the bishop away from f4, but after a move like bishop to d2, you will, well, permanently have a weakness here on d5, and this d6 pawn will be weak for the rest of the game. So instead, after bishop to f4, Topalov went for knight to h5. He wants to get rid of the bishop, some other way. But Karpov doesn't retreat, he plays e3, opening up a discovered attack on this knight on h5. And Topalov isn't the kind of player that will put the knight back to f6, so he captures. Knight captures on f4 and eliminates Karpov's bishop's pair. And Karpov plays e captures on f4 and bishop to d7. And we have queen to d2 now, connecting rooks and getting ready to develop them. And what's the plan here for Topalov? Topalov plays queen to b8, probably with the idea of playing g6, bishop to f6, and then maybe fianchettoing the bishop, or maybe g6 developing the rook, bishop f8, and then putting the bishop to g7. This seems like a plan for black, but it's not that easy to achieve this. So Karpov plays rook to e1, and we have g6. And you can see that black has a fianchetto formation here around his king, but he doesn't have a fianchettoed bishop. So this is a pretty weak setup. So Karpov goes for h4. We have a6, and you can't really play something like bishop to f6 here to completely finish your plan, because knight to e4 attacks your bishop on f6 and also this pawn on d6. So you just have to go back with bishop to e7. So after h4, Topalov goes for a6, and now h5. We have b5 by Topalov, and h captures on g6. H captures on g6, and here Karpov plays knight to c5. This isn't a piece sacrifice as well. If pawn captures knight, then queen captures this bishop on d7. And, well, since Topalov doesn't really have a use for this bishop here, it's not really doing anything, he allows it, as he doesn't see any threats that Karpov might have. So he captures, d-captures on c5, and queen captures on d7, now attacking this knight with the queen and also with the bishop. So we have rook to c8, now defending the knight. And, well, what do you do here as white? Well, why not capture the knight here with bishop captures on c6? Well, if you play bishop captures on c6, this seems like it's winning a piece, but it's really not. For example, rook to a7, attacking the queen, and after the queen moves, well, for example, queen to d3, you simply capture the piece back, rook captures on c6. And this is somewhat of a drawn position, maybe a bit better for white, but Karpov doesn't go for this. Karpov had a completely different idea. After Topalov went rook to c8, Karpov played rook captures on e6. It seems like he's sacrificing a rook, but it's really a brilliant idea. What happens if you capture the rook? Well, if you capture the rook with f captures on e6, you get queen captures on e6 with check, king to g7, and now bishop captures on c6, attacking the rook on a8. And, well, what do you play here? For example, queen to d6, queen captures, bishop captures, and rook captures on a8. And after the bishop is captured, simply c captures on b5. A captures on b5 and knight captures on b5. Karpov would be up 3 pawns with a completely winning endgame. So after this rook to e6 idea by Karpov, Topalov decided to play rook to a7. As now Karpov can't capture the knight on c6, nor can he capture this bishop on e7, as his queen is attacked. But Karpov is determined to sacrifice his rook, and he plays rook captures on g6. And, well, you can't really refuse this offering, as, well, for example, if you go king h8, you get mated with queen to h3. And if you play something like king to h7, again, queen to h3 check, king captures rook, bishop to e4 check, and after a move like f5, queen captures, and king to g7, queen g6 check, king has to go to f8, and now bishop to d5, threatening checkmate on f7 and also on g8. You have to defend this bishop to d6, making room for the king on d7, and after rook e1, cutting off the king from the e-file. Well, there's really no way to prevent queen g8 checkmate. You can prevent it, but you will suffer severe material loss. So okay, after rook captures on g6, Topalov decided to capture the rook. F captures on g6, and we have queen to e6 check first, king to g7, and now bishop captures on c6. And okay, I mean, Topalov is still up the exchange, but his king is pretty bare naked there. Rook to d8 by Topalov, and we have c captures on b5. And this is I really enjoy this move. If you're an aggressive player, you just sacrifice some material and you want to go for the attack, you want to finish your opponent. Most players would probably go for knight to e4 here, adding more pieces into the attack. But Karpov is a positional player, and he doesn't miss an opportunity to capture a pawn. So he goes c captures on b5. And Topalov plays a bishop to f6. He wants to consolidate his position. And only now, knight to e4, now with a tempo on the bishop. Bishop to d4. And, well, here, again, if you were an aggressive player, you might get ideas like f5, to completely go for the attack. Or maybe even king to g2. To bring the rook into the attack with rook to h1. But again, Karpov doesn't miss an opportunity to grab a pawn, and he plays b captures on a6. Well, you don't really want to recapture this pawn, as this rook is, well, doing a great job defending the 7th rank. So Karpov just grabs the pawn. I mean, what a gentleman. Queen to b6 by Topalov, and we have rook to d1. And, well, it seems like you do have some tactics here, but you don't really. For example, bishop captures on f2, although you do attack this rook on d1 now. After knight captures it, the rook is defended, so this is out of the question. So after rook to d1, Topalov grabs this pawn on a6, this dangerous passed pawn, queen captures on a6. And what do you do here? If you're Karpov, well, this bishop is guarding f6, and, well, you really do want to get your queen to f6. So what do? You remove the defender. Rook captures on d4, sacrificing the second exchange. We have rook captures on d4, and now queen to f6 check. And now Karpov has a firm grip on Topalov's king. King to g8, we have queen captures on g6, king f8. And now, okay, queen to h6 wins the game a lot more quickly than the move Karpov played. But this was over the board, the clock is ticking, so it's important to find any winning move, not the one that wins the fastest. So Karpov played queen to e8 with check, king to g7, and now queen to e5 check. King to g8, knight to f6 with check, king to f7, bishop to e8 with check, and, well, you don't really want to go to g7 to allow some nasty discoveries. Topalov goes king to f8, and now queen captures on c5 with check, attacking this rook here on d4. So queen to d6, defending, and now a simple move, queen captures rook on a7, threatening queen to f7, checkmate. So queen captures on f6 is played, and here Karpov plays bishop to h5. And this is preventing any rook to d1 check ideas. Also, when the king comes to g2, this bishop to f3 will be a really great defensive plan. And what did Karpov get from all of this? Topalov is still up the exchange, but Karpov is up 5 pawns. This is, well, 5 pawns for a rook for the exchange. This is just too much. Rook to d2, attacking that pawn on b2, and also, well, maybe adding pressure to that f2 pawn, but this is all very unlikely. b3, defending, rook to b2, and after king to g2, Topalov resigned the game, as there is nothing he can do in this position. White is just up too much material. Whatever black plays, for example, even, let's say he checks the king, after a move like bishop to f3, there really is no more attacking ideas here for black, and white will just push, for example, this a pawn to victory. So after this king to g2 move, Topalov resigned the game, and Karpov is 3 out of 3, and will continue to win games all the way to round 8, I believe. He was 7 out of 7 before he drew his first game against Alexey Shirov. So yeah, definitely one of Karpov's greatest tournament victories, and you know, if you'd like, I will put a link to this Linares tournament in the description below, so you can check out some of the other games. I will probably do more games from this tournament, not all of them, of course, but you know, I do recommend you check them out. So yeah, that's the game. That's Karpov's Immortal of Linares 1994. I do hope you enjoyed it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.